Hello and welcome to this lesson about comparing rational numbers, part 1. The learning target for this video is ordering integers and fractions on a number line and then being able to compare them. So let's talk about the number line. Now, number lines have a very particular way that they go. So it's essentially what the words imply it is. It's a line where we put numbers. And what we like to do is we like to center our number line around 0. And then what we're going to do is we more often than not put integers. Now technically you can put whatever numbers you want on a number line. And you can kind of stretch it and do all kinds of cool stuff with it. So we'll center it with 0, but then we go to the right, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so on and so on that way. In the other direction we put the negative numbers. -1, -2, -3, and -4. And so one of the main takeaways I want you to get from this by looking at this one number line is that smaller is on the left and larger is on the right. So whenever we're making a number line and we're going to compare numbers that are to the right of another number are larger. Now, to kind of help us communicate that, we need to have a quick recap on our inequalities. So let's go inequality recap. So we have two main symbols. We have less than or greater than. And so sometimes I've noticed students really struggle with understanding which one is which. And so there are a couple of things going on here that we can help, greater than, we can use to help remind ourselves about how these work. First of all, the less than symbol, watch this. If we were to kind of like, take the L from less than and make it progressively sloppier and sloppier and sloppier, you end up getting the less than symbol. So the one that looks like L, that looks more like L, is the less than symbol. Now, ultimately, the way these work is that I think often in elementary school you're taught the alligator analogy, where the alligator always wants the larger number. And so the smaller number goes at the point, the larger number is at the open mouth, and the alligator's eating the larger number. Okay? And so when it comes to inequalities, and we're taking a look at what's going on with the number line, with something like I circled there, we would say 2 is greater than -1, or we could say 1 is less than, or -1, sorry, is less than 2. So there's several different ways we can write these things out and it can still be true. All right, one more thing about number lines. Actually, a couple more things. So, like I said, if we want to, we can stretch out the number line in a variety of different ways. So we can center it again at 0, but then what I can do is I can stretch it out like this and say 1, -1. And then I could put non-integer numbers in here. So I could be like, this is 1/2. That's -1/2. This is 1/4. This is -1/4. And so number lines, we can kind of stretch them or condense them to kind of see how numbers relate to each other. So if I want to, 0, and I can just go straight to 10 and -10. So number lines are very flexible, but the main thing that they do that really helps us is it helps us see where numbers are and how they relate to each other. Now the last thing I want to talk about before we talk about like how to order all these things is a few more vocab terms. So let's take a look at 1/4 and -1/4. These would be considered opposites because they are on the opposite side of 0 here, and they have different signs. The other thing I want to point out is something called absolute value. An absolute value is a distance. So if we take a look at what we have here, that green line, if I were to measure it out, take a string, it is 10 units long. And that 10 units is what we would call the absolute value. And the way we write this in math is we'd say 2 big bars going up and down, and that gets read as absolute value of 10, which equals 10. But the thing is, I could take this same green line and I can apply it over here because this is also 10 units long. And so the absolute value of negative 10 is positive 10. So absolute values are always positive. All right, now that we've talked about number lines, let's talk about comparing and ordering integers. So essentially, we can use number lines, NL, to help us. So let's say we want to compare some numbers, so let's just kind of go an example, negative 4 and 5. And we need to put an inequality symbol here. Well, we can make a number line, and we can kind of sketch it out really quickly, and think, which one is on the left. So let's see here. So the left of 0 would be negative 4, and over here to the right would be 5. Well, anything to the left is smaller, so negative 4 is less than 5. Now the catch, and the way I'm going to test you guys on this and see if you're really paying attention, is if we're dealing with just negative numbers in general. That tends to throw you for a loop. So let's go with negative 6, negative 8. And again, what we want to do is we want to put an inequality symbol here. Here is definitely where a number line can be helpful. So I have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Negative 6, negative 8. Now remember the rule. Small is on the left, large is on the right. So this is actually, the 6 here, is the larger of the two numbers because it is further to the right than negative 8. It's closer to, well, I don't want to say closer to 0 because if it's positive numbers might be, closer to 0, like positive 1. But what we're just looking for is the number that's further to the right on the number line. So if that's the larger one, we're going to have the inequality opening up towards it, and that is greater than. Now the other thing, another look you could have with problems like this, is where I give you several integers and you have to put them in order from least to greatest or greatest to least. So let's say we're going to go from least to greatest, and I'm giving you the numbers negative 5, negative 10, 5, and 10. So we just essentially want to make this look like how it appears on the number line. And the way we would do that is essentially just flopping these guys around. Negative 10, negative 5, 5, and 10. And then if I wanted to go from greatest to least, so greatest to least, I have to essentially revert this order. So negative 10, sorry, not negative 10, positive 10, positive 5, negative 5, negative 10. So if you're asked to order integers or any rational numbers, first of all, make sure you're reading carefully so you understand which way they want it to go. Finally, let's talk about comparing or ordering fractions. And here we're going to just kind of focus on the very basic component of it, and later I'll talk more about the more complicated versions of how to order fractions. But the main thing we want, and sort of like a core idea here, or a big idea, is we want to have a common denominator. Because if we have a common denominator, it makes it easier to actually compare them. So let's say we have something like 2/5 and 1/5, and we want to compare them. We have to put an inequality symbol here. Well, as long as we have the same denominator, which we have, you then just compare the numerators. And you ask, how do these relate? 2 is greater than 1, so it's going to be greater than. If, oops, sorry there. Let's try another example. Let's go with 7/12 and compare that to 11/12. Again, what we want to do is focus in on the denominators. If they're the same, we then compare the numerators. Later, we'll talk about what to do if the numerators are different. If the denominators are different. And so here, 11 is greater than 7, so we'll have the open edge pointing towards the 11. Finally, one point I want to make is we have to be careful. Because one thing you might be asked to do is compare 1/9, 1/10, and 1/11. And let's kind of think about what this would look like. So, let's draw it out. 1/9 means that when we're going from 0 to 1, we're breaking up into 9 different chunks. And so it's going to be hard to draw. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now they're not all equal, so it's maybe not doing the best job showing it to you. But if we are going to do something like 1/10, we need to make it even smaller because we have to then squeeze one more in here. And then if we go 1/11th, we have to go even smaller and squeeze yet another one in there. And so the point I want to make is the larger the denominator is getting, the smaller the actual number could be. So here, 1/9 is the largest, then followed by 1/10, and then 1/11th is the smallest. All right, so like if we were to actually draw that on a number line for real, so let's go 0, let's go 1. This would be 1/9, that would be 1/10, and this would be 1/11th. So those are some of the basics of comparing integers and rational numbers. Good luck on your homework or practice, and let me know if you have any other questions.